Okay, awesome. Welcome, Maya. Thanks for joining my podcast. It's April 16th. And you are my first person to hop on the podcast and join as a guest. So thank you so much for this.
Woohoo.
Woohoo! Yeah, we do talk about relationships quite often, and sometimes you're like, oh, there's this relationship done different class coming up, and I'm like, yeah. But yeah, so
Well, something about, I don't know if everybody who listens to your podcast does access consciousness or not. I would just say that I learned a lot about relationships through access consciousness, and the reason that I will mention a book or a class is because there's so much information to even start to see where we were functioning from with relationships, and also what else, like different possibilities with relationships that maybe we've never encountered because it's not normal, it's not the way people do it, it's in a way too easy and not dramatic enough.
yeah.
So it does take a lot of choice to change that learning curve and dive into it and really be okay and patient with just the process of like unlearning everything you have learned about relationship and kind of implementing a new way of being with relationships. So all of that to say, in short, that it's not necessarily something that changes overnight. And yeah, there's just a lot of information out there, but that over time can make your life so much easier with relationships.
The funny thing is like, I know it's not quite a relationship book, but I love The Gentleman's Club. And what's funny about that is it's like, it's almost getting like, uh, being honest with yourself and being like, okay, what I like. And then the definitions of relationship can mean so many different things to people. And yeah, like so, and I like most people who listen to my podcast, some people probably just don't even know who I am, where I'm from, or anything. And then there's some people who definitely I know, and if anyone knows me, then um, they'll know that like I study access consciousness and that I do facilitate classes. So yeah, and then sometimes I'll even put in some advertisements as well and let people know. And but anyways, back to like um this it's interesting because if people, first of all, there's a lot of definitions, and if people were being true to themselves, it would look a whole lot different. And also being able to express yourself is something that can be like different as well without being wrong. So they're like, so taking out the wrongness of the other person in relationship and then being able to express yourself. Because I'm looking at relationships and I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? Like, who's in my life? Is this a relationship? And what is the definition of relationship, you know? Like, yeah.
Well, and you mentioned the gentleman's club and also just that thing of like um it starting with your relationship with yourself, which is also something that it maybe takes us a long time to even really start considering ourselves, or that we think that if we consider ourselves now, everyone else is kind of, we kind of start rejecting everything else, which is also not the consciousness solution.
Mhm.
But yeah, like the more you get to have a relationship with yourself, the more you can have something different with everybody else. And most of our life we have spent in one way or another trying to please other people. So it definitely has this dismantling feel to it, and a lot of your relationships might change and change format, or go away or become way stronger. Like they can all morph in different ways once you choose to have a different and better relationship with you. And yeah, it's not necessarily comfortable or doesn't seem easy necessarily, or like sometimes, because it sounds like this big concept to even I don't know, like I've been just taking care of other people my whole life. What are you even talking about right now?
Hmm. The word concept is something the word concept, I've been like trying to say that word for the past like probably 2 or 3 days because I'm like, what is that? What is that? And it's like, yes, concept. I forgot that word. And it is like you said, like the dismantling and unraveling, and it's a lot of things because you're also kind of like, okay, who am I? Who am I today? Like each day is new. And as you get to know yourself, it's like you said, you're not cutting off people. A great reminder is include everybody. And that's the beauty. But when I found this, the reminder of like, okay, yes, there's a lot of things going on in your life. There's so like, it's funny because like I'm single, and then I just like, I look at people who are like married and have kids, and I'm like, holy crap, like that's another reality in another world because you have, in relationship, more people who are connected and closer to you. And it's like, if for example, if I had a relationship and there's breakups or there's just whatever, and sometimes relationships aren't necessarily easy, the greatest reminder is yes, keep going and also include everything and everyone as you expand out. So, and that was just such a beautiful thing because I was like, oh, there's no like separation, there's no like trauma, drama, devastation. It's just um you can include everything and everyone. And yeah, it's different compared to a lot of functioning in this reality where sometimes people like go into that trauma and drama but cut people off and they don't exist. This happened in a community once where I was like in a community and I was like, oh, what happened? And this happened actually quite a lot with communities where it was as if I didn't exist. And I asked a friend once, I was like, so what happened? Like, we stopped talking or, and she's like, well, you disappeared. And I'm like, actually, I was like, oh, I'm here still. I'm alive. Hi. Like I didn't go anywhere. But like, what if we had like this different world where, there was like no judgment and just people were just included. Like there was no separation.
Yeah, with two things that popped when you were talking as one, a lot of times it's mentioned that in research there's um so many, what's it called? Like just studies that show that people will stay, they'll stay in a bad relationship rather than have no relationship at all. And that's part of like, I'm single, I'm married, I'm like, it's kind of like, unless you choose different, you're always judging what you have or don't have. And that's one of the things that we unravel a lot in private facilitations or access classes or the relationship classes. And another thing is like, which is kind of the flip side of that research, is that a lot of times, and I saw that many times through private sessions, it's that people um, will say that they desire a relationship, but they don't have a relationship in their lives, and they're never actually willing to be present with, oh, I actually don't want a relationship. And if I would like a relationship and really be congruent with it, it would just show up with total ease.
Mhm.
Instead, and why is that a problem? It's not a problem at all, except for the fact that you could be enjoying the fact that you're single instead of judging the fact that you don't have a relationship. And that's kind of like this
Yeah.
uh, these choices that we don't even know we have because we are constantly trying to fit into that mold. So like, I'll stay in a bad relationship just to have one is pretty much equal to I'll keep judging myself that I'm single instead of enjoying that. Like, it's kind of this damned if you do, damned if you don't reality versus what we discovered with the possibilities that Access has with relationship, which is really just enjoying all your choices with relationship.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when people hop out of their bad relationships. I'm always like, whoa, you left. They're like, yeah, well, and to those people who are kind of like married to this one person, thinking that they have to stay with them forever and ever and for all eternity and every other lifetime, I think the greatest thing that we can let people know is like yes, it's a choice, but I've also, like, with my observation, I've seen people in these, I guess, bad relationships, and the person who is either taking everything on, sometimes there's like a lot of literal, like physical disease, like a cancer that comes up, or like all these things. And I'm looking, I'm like, and I know that is a whole nother, like, that's like, the cancer thing could be so many different things, but I'm like, oh, look at all these relationships, and that one person is dying. And I'm like, I wonder what would happen if they either, chose something else, or had a, I think they called it conscious breakup or something. I think Gwyneth Paltrow like made up this thing. It was like the conscious uncoupling. And it's just sometimes I think, it's great to have this conversation and let people know it's like, well, you know what else is possible, or like what can you do for you, and if you did get like a divorce or a separation, um you could always just get back together, but some people like really make it solidified. I think it's a bit traditional and old school, and people are like, I'm with this person forever and ever and ever, and it's like, oh cool, like does it work for them? Maybe yes. And I see a lot of things as an observer where I'm like, oh, what if, would they be a whole lot better if they maybe explored and figured out who they are, instead of like having this person connected to them, and like maybe not a contribution in their lives. you know
Yeah, and it's also really having that I think I said that before, but kind of grace and kindness with yourself through the exploration. Because for me, when I started the journey with access consciousness, it was like, oh shit. I mean, I chose marriage, I chose kids, I chose all those things from a very more unconscious place of like, this is the next step in life, da 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 da. And then so you get these more conscious tools and you're like, oh wait, now I have all of this to deal with. And it can also be this kind of like overwhelming, like, because you think all you want to do is get rid of whatever you chose from unconsciousness versus just having that exploration with you and really developing what works for me, what I would like to have, what I would like to create, and allowing the reality to change around you versus on like based on that versus oh no, now I have to divorce everybody and leave everybody and start over again.
yeah,
and and again, it goes back to that thing of we're always taking care of everyone around us and with their wants, needs, desires, requires, whether it was conscious or unconscious, from even being kids and thinking that we have to make our parents happy. Like it really starts from a very young age to the degree of like when you ask someone, okay, what would you actually like your life to be like, or what would you like to create? And it's this blank, like, huh? I get to choose that? What do you mean? Like I have all these set parameters of life that lead me to those choices, not I don't get to ask what I would like to create or have or what kind of relationship I would like to have. So it's a
yeah.
journey.
Yeah, like I'm glad you brought up that topic. I know a lot of women who are single, or maybe not single or whatever, and have kids. And then if it's like, I know my best friend, if she wants to hang out, she's gonna hang out, and she makes it work, right? With her husband and her kids. And it's great. Like she's awesome. And then there's another like the other side where there's a lot of people who don't maybe see the possibility of like what you said, like, okay, so what would I like and how can I make this work for me? So it could be like, taking the time for themselves and making a life like, I guess it's like reality beyond this reality, where it's like, yeah, your kids chose you as a parent and you're awesome, you're an awesome person, like, and you have this relationship with your family and your kids. And it's like I see people making the best as they can with their families, and it's like I look at, and with access consciousness, I see a lot of people with their families and kids, and it's amazing how a lot of like I guess facilitators are like, cool. And I'm gonna, do this class or like, travel or like add more to their lives and have like the I guess wealth and like again create like a reality beyond this reality where they're not necessarily like uh giving themselves up completely. There's this possibility of like expanding more and always adding more to your life. The other day, oh my God, so I met these people and um, so I have these antiques that I keep breaking by accident. And so so this guy's named Earl, and he's like, well, you could bring them here and I'll fix them. And I met his wife, and I guess him and his wife were chatting with me. They're lovely people. And anyways, so when I was leaving, I guess they said that their family founded like GM or something, General Motors. And I was like, oh, and then his wife's comment was, yeah, but we're not rich or wealthy or something. And I looked at her, I was like, honey, wealth is in the heart. you know, and then it was a great like day. It was really sunny out, but it was, it's like uh, I know from one of the classes I took with Access that in regards to wealth, relationships were meant to create more wealth historically between two people. So imagine if we kind of function in that way where it's like, okay, so how can we thrive? Like, how can we create more with all of this, Yeah.
Yeah. So, one thing that is mentioned in some of the Access stuff is that there's really only three parameters for a good relationship, which is uh, the other person is good in bed. They let you do what you want to do when you want to do it. You let them to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and they add money to your life, which is that wealth that you were talking about that can show up directly and also indirectly just from sometimes you add a person to your life and your financial possibilities start to grow, not necessarily through their bank account. So and then it's really funny to look at that just in the sense of like, what, that's it, or that's too simple, or like, we have so many parameters um in what we learn to expect or look for or judge that we need in a relationship. And then when we are presented with that kind of information, it's like,
It's kind of like all really indirect, which I find is really the key to everything. If we if we're trying to control everything and make a conclusion, that never really gives us what we would truly like to have. But if I'm like, because I looked at this like, how can I enjoy and create more in my life? And it was like going out in nature. And then, it was like, oh, maybe, someone will pop up to have fun with and play with. So like I think as you start to connect with yourself, figure out who you are, and figure out what's fun for you, then it's like as an indirect, I guess, way, things start to show up. Um, yeah, it's very, very interesting because like you said, the whole money part. So it's not always necessarily someone directly being like, oh, here's like thousands of dollars. That'd be great. If someone did that, I'd be like, awesome. But like, it's also like the energetics of like, if you add, like, even like a relationship, whether it's a marriage or kids or whatever, or if you're dating and you add people to your life, it's like, um, that could be indirect. Like, so if there's, and also with what we're talking about, um, it's like, once you start to play around with all of these tools, it's like you kind of start to like be able to receive more and become more conscious and aware of like, oh, like so my like relationships with people can create more wealth in an indirect way, if that makes sense. you know
totally. I mean, even looking back, I always would be this energy of what else is possible with my husband's profession. And asking for raises. And I always contributed to him to go on that uncomfortable journey of like asking for more and asking what else is possible. And like his salary constantly grew the more um,
Wow.
I invited him to that. So, and it's a weird kind of judgeable offense that women can stick themselves with, like, that they're not necessarily directly bringing in the money for the family. And when we choose sometimes to ask what's right about it, we're not getting, or what am I a contribution? Like, how am I a contribution financially that I've never considered? It's like, oh, wait, like there's so many points in his career that I was like, mm, you know, I saw a
Yeah.
possibility there and opened up the space for him. And, he could have not chosen as well. It's not that we can always be that for people and they get to choose, but it's really looking at like the whole financial strength of the family grew, and part of it was me being that contribution. So
Mhm. It's really like kind of like empowering and kind of being alongside that person and kind of like how the best way to say it is like empowering, right? Where it's like, yeah, you got this, you can do this, and yeah, like ask for more money, right? Um, it's interesting because like for me, I'm like, oh, what would it take for more to show up and continuously grow? So for example, like with business, I've always had a lot of people come into my life and a lot of people who genuinely help because there's the transactional like business and relationship, and then there's like people who just show up and want to contribute. And this happened yesterday where someone showed up and she was like, well, I can help you with the branding and the logo and all this stuff. And she was like so paying attention to detail. And at the end of the conversation, I said, well, how much per hour and do I owe you, and like what's going on, like what's the deal? She's like, oh, I'm just gonna help you and like we're just gonna work on this together. And I'm like, what? And throughout my life with this business, people have shown up with like talking about websites and like they're like, well, I'll just show you everything, tell you how to do everything. And I'm like, and I'm always like trying to either honor the person, be like, okay, so how much do you want for this? And then there's like other, interesting conversations and transactional relationships where the person's like, okay, this is going to cost like, $5,000 and then like, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I think with relationships, whether it's business or whatever, I think it's also what I've learned throughout my life is, and I said this yesterday, is to like kind of build trust. So wherever I go, it's like really connecting, really having conversations and building that relationship of trust. Um, that can lead like can lead to so many different things. Like I never thought, I looked at this and I was like, oh, my business actually took me to different people, and those people were the generation of like wealth and kindness. And if I didn't ask for these things and for more to show up, I wouldn't be meeting these people. And so it's like, where can these things take you? Whereas if I'm just thinking, oh, I just want money for my business, all these things are so indirect, and it's like your life can grow as an indirect result. Kind of went off on a business tangent, but like it's all these different like that's what I love about relationship is like it's
totally.
so like you could talk about anything and everything, and acknowledging the contribution that you are, you know, like
Yeah. And the wealth part, which is that you can take the taxi, you can take the private helicopter, you can take the public bus. Like wealth is just about having all those possibilities available to you. So it's not that it's only right when someone gifts you the free session about a website. It's like, I can pay for a website, I can receive from this person. I'm like, as long as I'm not insistent of, oh, it has to look this way and I have to pay them if they gifted something to me, that's when we're out of that transactional relationship reality and into like just receiving from everything and everyone, which also includes paying them sometimes and also includes receiving sometimes.
that whole gifting and receiving is a huge one. Like Um, I'm kind of like looking at relationships and the people in my life, and I'm like, like, what would it take to, choose the joy and happiness, enjoy every moment when I see people and when I'm interacting with people. And I'm like, I'm kind of looking at like, okay, so, you know, is it possible to create it's funny, and it's maybe it's not even just one relationship, because again, it's that conversation of do you really, really, really want a relationship, or expanding out as what else is possible with creating joyful relationships, happy relationships, and including like not just yes, there is the one person where you could be monogamous and just seeing one person, and it's like, what is relationship? What can we create on this planet?
I'm just not sure how long we're going for, but I also sense that there's a lot of pieces in this, and it may just be a beginning and an opening of an ongoing conversation that we
I
can
know we could probably talk for like
keep
hours.
exploring. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are pretty much at like the 30-minute mark. Yeah. And yeah, so these like can go for like, I mean, sometimes it's 20 minutes, half an hour. And yeah, like you said, this could be kind of like an intro. So we can kind of wrap it up. And thanks for you're my first guest on my podcast. I'm super
Yeah.
grateful. And yeah. Oh, do you want to like promote any classes you have, or you have anything?
At the moment, I'm mostly doing some local stuff in Ontario. And yeah, if you ever want a private session, I have private sessions. I love exploring relationships with people and just allowing people to expand their possibilities with their relationship with themselves and everyone around them. So I can share my website, which is very easy, www.mayadayan.com. And yeah, just take the gems from here and see where it leads you, because that's one of the greatest things with consciousness. And it's just like these breadcrumbs that lead you to the next thing and the next thing. And there's no like one way. It's
Mhm.
really about trusting yourself and your journey and finding the right people that will facilitate you to greater.
Yeah, and it Dayan is DAYAN.com. And I do recommend sessions with you for sure. I think it's very uh a huge contribution and life changing. So if you guys, are seeking facilitation, definitely book a session. And we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thanks. Thanks for stopping in today
Thank you.
and listening.